Hello, thank you for joining me at Early Mathematics and Movement. We are an educational resource for early childhood educators. Please subscribe to our channel, Early Mathematics and Movement. Today we will be going over a lesson plan that helps your early learners with place value and incorporates movement into the classroom. Before we begin our lesson, there are 3 principles that we base our lessons off of. We want our lessons to be supported by movement because movement is beneficial for students in general. Movement is also effective for engagement, and we want our students to get the most out of every lesson and every moment spent in the classroom. Movement also improves children's understanding. This is integrated into our lessons to help promote mathematics on a statewide level and help students to transform the things that they are learning in the classroom into an impact. These are the Colorado academic standards that are supported in this lesson. I'm sure that you have similar academic standards in your area, and this is just for Colorado academic standards for first grade in mathematics. We will be going over helping students to understand place value. The things that you will need for this lesson is an open space in which students can view the whiteboard freely and have access to the following materials. Teachers will need to prepare a randomized list of numbers 1 through 20, magnetized shapes, dry erase markers, a sign for each student made out of paper or a dry erase board, 2 taped squares at least on the floor for 1 student to stand in at a time. The things that you will need to prepare before the lesson is that the taped squares need to be in open spaces on the classroom floor. Each of the taped squares will be in groups of 2, and these can be spread out throughout the classroom. Set out the materials for each student to create a sign. This can be done with a piece of paper or a dry erase board or other materials that are found in your classroom. You need to have a number between 10 and 19 written on the classroom whiteboard before the lesson begins. And you will also need to have shapes assigned to symbolize the place value of the number on the whiteboard. To begin our lesson, students will gather in a central location in the classroom, and this needs to be facing the classroom whiteboard. Because there is a number between 10 and 19 already on the whiteboard when the lesson begins, you are going to use this to symbolize the tens and ones place of the number on the classroom whiteboard. As discussed earlier in the materials, there will be magnetized shapes for the students to use. You may assign 1 shape for the tens place and another shape for the ones place. What this will look like is there will be a whiteboard with your number 1 through 10 on it. In this example, I will use 13, and then I have assigned, actually, we're going to use the number 14, and I have created an online whiteboard. Here is our number 14 that is on our whiteboard, and I have used the shape of squares to symbolize each. And of course, in your classroom, if you need more differentiation and your students need to see a clear difference between tens and ones, you can of course use different shapes. For this one, you want your students to learn that anything in the tens place will represent a 10. In this case, it is 1, 10. And also seen in the academic standards, students need to learn that in the tens place, it needs to be seen as a bundle of 10. Also, in the ones place, we have 4 ones. 1, 10, and 4 ones. And starting off your lesson this way is just to support your students in learning what the tens and ones place does and the kind of place value that it holds in numbers. The next thing you're going to do after your students feel comfortable identifying numbers 10 through 19 with the place values, then each student will choose a number between 1 and 9 and write it on their sign. As discussed earlier, you can use a variety of materials for each student to create their sign, and you can use a variety of ways for the students to secure their sign onto them. Sometimes it's difficult for students to carry a sign with them physically for longer amounts of time, so it might be easier for them to attach a string around or attach it to their clothing somehow. Each student should receive a sign with the number 1 through 9 on it. Students will then be divided into groups, especially if you have a larger class, and students will be assigned to each pair of squares around the classroom. For an example, you might want to use 5 students on each pair of squares. If you need to control more behavior management in your classroom, then you can lower the amount of students at each pair of squares. As the teacher announces a number from the randomized list of numbers 1 through 20, students will arrange themselves in the squares to create the number, and there will be a diagram of what the square looks like. As seen as on our whiteboard example, the number was 14. What a students would do then is that there is a square for tens place and a square for ones place. That's why we need pairs of squares. In 14, the student who has the number 1 will move to the tens place, and the student who has the number 4 would move to the ones place. After the students have moved to their respective place values based on their number and the number that is called, then students will identify which number is in which place. The other students in the group can announce that 1 is in the tens place and 4 is in the ones place. And this is our diagram. And taped squares will be on the floor in this diagram around the classroom. As announced earlier, 14, and then there would be a 1 in the tens place, and the student representing 4 in the ones place. After the students have completed the place value activity, they can join into their groups used for the squares or different groups of 2 to 4, and each group will receive a copy of the randomized list of numbers. The students will work together to identify which numbers on the list represent the tens place and the ones place. After the groups have completed identifying which numbers are in the tens and ones place, then they will choose 2 to 3 of the double-digit numbers to present to the class. This can be done in small turn-and-talk groups or to the entire class. In our number example 14, then the students would present to the other class that they have the number 14 and that the 1 is in the tens place and the 4 is in the ones place. Presenting to the class, the students will demonstrate the different ways they can arrange themselves to represent their double-digit numbers of choice. Since our example that we're sticking with is 14, then the student in that group who is the number 1 would arrange themselves in the square that represents the tens place, and the student that is the 4 in the group would represent themselves on the squares for the 4 place. There are many opportunities for educators to assess their students during this lesson plan. It can be conducted informally as the students are participating in the place value activity. As they're moving around the room, teachers can assess if the students are going to the correct places and if they understand the place value that the tens and ones places hold. A more formal assessment can be conducted after and during the students are using their randomized list to identify which place value is which. And also you can assess their presenting skills. Are they able to show the class what the place values represent in their double-digit numbers? There's additional resources that you can reach out to other than our YouTube channel and also supported in our YouTube channel for you to have resources to find other ideas for incorporating movement and diversity in subjects in your mathematical teaching. If you need any more support and ideas for differentiation during this lesson plan and may need to see the details of this lesson plan, there will be a link to the lesson plan in this channel. Thank you for watching our videos and staying in tune and helping your classroom meet their educational needs through movement. Thank you.